All right, setting up. Boom. I think we're doing it.
It says,
Oh,
yep.
I see you. Wonderful. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my Zoom. There we are. And welcome everybody here today. I'm glad you're here, Heather. We
Hi.
haven't even met, but, and I'm not going to say what your last name is because I'm probably not going to pronounce it right. So if you could just say your last name for me.
It's Ajzenman.
Ajzenman. Wonderful. Okay, everybody out there in Facebook land and everybody that joined us via Zoom, thank you for being here. This is Heather, and she is also a nature-based professional, has her own business, does some hippotherapy and some nature-based work with clients. So I welcome her today. She's going to share her journey, how her vision kind of came to fruition. And so I'm just going to hand it over to you to kind of share how you arrived where you are today with your business, if you would be so kind.
Absolutely. So, I've been in OT since, I guess, technically 2013, but I graduated in 2012. I got my doctorate from Washington University in St. Louis. And most of my background initially, I have a lot of experience with horses in the background, grew up with horses, lots of riding and competition, did a lot of stuff with that growing up. Funny enough, my grandfather was one of the first OTs in the country back in the early 1900s.
Wow.
So I have all his cool textbooks and all the textbooks, handwritten books, and all that stuff. And my mother was an early support provider as well. She was education specialist. So it was kind of just everything growing up. That's all I did. And
You were
then
desperate.
I ended up, working for a larger horse base center that had a therapy practice on site. And I ended up, just loving it. And I used to lead in sessions and sidewalk in sessions. And so I ended up going to OT school, and my focus was primarily I wanted to do pediatrics and I wanted to use horses. So that was kind of like my big focus. But I started off, I actually have research in, and I published a study in 2013 on looking at the impact of using hippotherapy as a treatment tool in OT for children that have an ASD diagnosis. Um, so that was kind of, I don't know if you're supposed to be on silent or not, but it's okay. And then I ended up, um, long story short, I did the traditional route of where I worked in a clinic, I worked in early intervention, but I was having a hard time pushing it to practices to let me use hippotherapy because there isn't a high cost overhead, significant high cost overhead. So I decided, well, I better just do this on my own. Started off private pay, was not getting a lot of clients. So I went in network with some of the major insurances and Medicaid that do allow you to use hippotherapy as a treatment tool. Um, and relating more to the nature based side of things, so I've always been an outdoor person myself. I mean, I live in New Hampshire, so we don't have huge mountains, but we have like the 4,000 footers. So I've done hiking a bunch of those. I hiked a lot in Colorado, just because I love hiking out there. I've done a lot of hiking, a lot of kayaking, just a lot of those outdoor based camping things. And I always wanted to put it into my practice, but I just never thought about it using it together. Um, and then COVID hit, and after I did telehealth for 3 months and wanted to pull my hair out, I was at a place where I wanted to continue offering services. And when you incorporate hippotherapy, typically I use sites that have horses and they have a lot of outdoor space. And I've always pushed the idea of, with using hippotherapy, you need to use hippotherapy part of the session and then your regular treatment approaches. So I was like, always was like, all right, well, I need a clinic space on site. And I was struggling with that because it just wasn't viable at many of the farm locations that I contract with. And then COVID hit and everything was outdoors. And I was like, why am I not using nature? Why am I not doing these things? So I'm very fortunate that my major location is on about 17 acres. We have a beautiful creek brook stream, whatever people call it. A beautiful bridge. We have really nice woods. We have some fields and open spaces. So that has become the way we do everything. Mostly our sessions on the horse are outside anyways, and then we just transition to using the outdoor space and the natural surroundings to incorporate in our sessions.
Right.
Will definitely get harder as winter comes here, but we will try.
And you are in New Hampshire, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so you will get snow.
Oh, it gets freezing. So I did secure on site. I do have an indoor space now. It depends on what COVID is, but because there are days that it's okay for the kids to be out for a little bit, but being outside all day and not moving as much is going to get a little brutal. So
Yeah. I have a question about how you contract. So you're contracting with farms that are already doing like therapeutic riding, or?
Well, so I only have one site that is a path center. For people don't know, that's the Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship International, which used to be NARA. So I am on site at one place, but they're really far from me. So I actually contract with either lesson barns or private farms that have horses that are using are owned by other people, or if they no longer have a lesson program. So I'm primarily just at people's private or lesson program farms.
And so that's where the 17 acres is too?
Yeah. So the farm I'm at, primarily at, is just, I mean, it's New Hampshire. So it's just a gorgeous farm, and that's, they have beautiful property. So.
Awesome. So that works good. So do you contract like an hourly contract, or is it?
So yeah, so it's basically an hourly contract that that I pretty much what I do is I have a set fee that I pay that gives me use of the horses and use of the facility, and then I also I'm working on the transition of paying my horse leaders separately as well. So
Got it. Perfect. Awesome. Okay, I kind of interrupted you, but I had a question there.
No worries. Yep.
So, was there anything else you wanted to say about kind of your journey to where you are? So when did you launch your business then? That was when you started Hippotherapy, correct?
So I launched we moved to New Hampshire in 2016. Previously, I was in 3 years in North Carolina, where I first started working, just from horses, and that's where everything was. So, but I came up here, and I wasn't, unlike North Carolina, where one of the early sports and services, what they call our EI, allowed me to work with them the contract up here. It was just too much of an overhead cost for the clinics for them to walk away with nothing after we paid for those facility fees. So I had a wonderful clinic that I worked with in the Bedford area, New Hampshire, that was very open to me doing a side gig of having my own business using the horses. And then it just became so big that I left the clinic because I didn't want to be a conflict of interest anymore. So, but I'm also an hour away from them, so it's not as big of a deal. So.
Awesome. Awesome. Does anybody who's listening or on Zoom here have any questions for her? I know somebody, I think it was Robin, who said she had to leave early. So I just want to make sure that if you have questions that you ask them. Otherwise, we're going to kind of keep rolling here.
And I guess the other thing I should bring up too a little bit more I didn't think about is, so I have my hippotherapy clinical specialty, which is it's through a different certification board. You need like 6,000 hours of incorporating hippotherapy, and you take this exam and so forth. And the big background too is that my focus of my practice is very relationship based. So I have my advanced DIRFloortime certification, and I'm very big into using relationship based approaches, and very big on kind of incorporating, autistic first type of, what their voices are, what their ideas are, and so forth. So my practice is very neurodiversity based, and I very much focus on, ABA is definitely something that is not allowed in my practice, and I'll be clear out and flat. It is something I am against. I believe it's trauma, it's abusive, and so forth. So that's my honest opinion. So that's what my practice is very much. That is not allowed. So
maybe you could just take us through like a typical session.
Yeah,
combining those. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think what's interesting about my session from what I've seen from other nature-based practices is I get a very big diversity of kids coming in because a lot of them are coming primarily from the horse or knowing about my DIR background, and then they find out that I use the outdoors, I should say. So it depends on my kids. I think typically the nature-based practice, you'll see a lot of more of those kids with some social emotional differences. They might have some, fine motor, gross motor, but not significant motor differences, which I do have some kids with, we do some, and it's very modified for those type of kids. But typically what it looks like is sessions are typically about, an hour. The kids come to the session and we usually spend the first half using the horse. So I see the horse as a way for us to work on some more of those challenging motor skills, also to work on a lot of those sensory processing and social emotional pieces to kind of prepare them for then some of the other activities we do off the horse. So we do a lot of, using the horse's movement. The kids will do just a basic, lots of different positions on the horse. The horse will move differently through space, and we kind of address a lot of those motor planning skills and so forth on the horse. Some of the kids, we will actually do stuff on the ground with the horse first, helping getting the horse ready to address some of those skills. Or some of my kids will also do some stuff on the ground with the horse to work on some executive functioning through leading the horse through obstacle courses. Or for some of my kids, just that social emotional connection that they really need to help them regulate through the session. And then we transition to our outdoor space. It's very much, I don't have a lot set up because a lot of those more gross motor pieces are already addressed on the horse. So we do a lot of our play out in the woods or in the stream or the creek, or we use the creek to work on some problem solving as they navigate across it, because it's the whole length of the property. So and the property is long and narrow and long, so we have the creek through, they can go really far back with that. And then we also have a big thing has definitely been a lot of fort building too. We do a lot of fort building and problem solving and planning and things we need to set up. My student Emily's on right now, actually, so she's worked a lot with a lot of my clients on like more of those complex fort building type of activities as well.
Yeah. Awesome. And you said that you do bill insurance. So do you do out of network as well, or cash pay? And
So basically I'm in network with 3 insurance plans in my state. One, we have managed Medicaid, so we have multiple Medicaids in the state. So I'm in network with one managed Medicaid because they are fully aware and open and okay with using the horses as part of the practice. And then I'm in network with 2 other private insurance, again, same thing. There are a few insurances that clearly say we can't use horses in practice, so I'm not in network with them, or there are a few that unfortunately don't pay well, so I don't do it. And then what I do for those families, if their network, it still is okay with the use of the horse, but they don't pay well per se, I provide families with super bills, and then they submit for reimbursement. And then I have a few families that, because insurance doesn't cover it per se, that they pay privately, and or if they can't afford to do that, I work with them to access grants to cover sessions.
Sure. Awesome. So do you have staff that you have hired, or do you contract support staff, or what does that look like?
So what I do is right now I'm kind of a big growth. So I was all on my own. I developed a huge waiting list, and I am seeing 32 kids a week myself right now, with a few that are telehealth because of distance. Because I have some complex kids that I see with like pandas, and a bunch of other things if they can't leave their home. So I ended up just hiring a new OT yesterday officially. And I have locations south of me, which she'll be seeing kids at, which is great because it's an hour away and I really can't make it out there anymore. And then previously what I was doing was my horse leaders were more volunteer based, which is kind of the model you see in the therapeutic riding world when people pass centers. But because I'm a PLC, it's really not what you should be doing. So I've made the transition of actually now we're going to be slowing down with the horses because winter's coming and I don't have indoor access at my major location. But it will be transitioned to paid positions, and I have one primary horse leader that's going to probably put in about like 20 or something hours for me. So
Okay. And so that would be more seasonal work then for them, but
yeah,
still probably higher. Yeah.
it's interesting. I have a few of my horse leaders have their own neurodiversity and differences and so forth. So they are just really good with the horses, really good with the clients. They're really good with the horses. So for them, I guess it's based upon like how much pay they can get based on, so I have to, it's an interesting process because it's based upon all their benefits and so forth. So for them, it's actually better that it's not full long term either.
Got
So
it. That works out really good. I like that model. So is your dream one day to have your own space, or is this really kind of this model working for you because of not having that overhead and you can just come in and do your thing? What's
yeah,
your
I mean, I would say my overhead costs are pretty high in general right now. I mean, I probably pay just one location upwards to over 2,000 or something dollars a month because of my facility fee, but it's still cheaper than having your own horses. So, and then dealing with the horse, all the medical pieces. So, yes, would I love to have my own, facility and so forth? Yes, but at the same time, I mean, I kind of like this model approach. And I think a lot of therapists that use the horse are going to this model approach because yes, you're paying a huge amount for these facilities, but the facilities are benefiting, their horses are working there. I think it's
a win-win?
it's just a lot easier way to do it without having, I've had horses my whole life and the cost of just one horse, I mean, is so expensive. So, I mean, for me to have access to like locations of total of like 10 to 15 horses and only paying the cost of like 2 to 3, it's kind of ideal. So
Yeah, awesome. That's great. And so could you just give an example, and maybe this is feedback coming from your families about some functional outcomes that you see with this kind of hippotherapy combo with nature? Just maybe parent feedback or any functional outcomes that you see.
absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I feel what I like with the horse, and I really wish we can get some more research. I know the American Hippotherapy Association is trying hard to kind of get like that dosage type of thing, but it's really hard to measure. My kids are making progress really fast. So using the horse, you think about it, I mean, just taking the horse piece part, and then I'll talk about the nature piece part at the side. Is that using the horse is taking, say in a 30-minute period, I'm taking a guess because I know the research is from like 45 minutes, say like 3,000 steps in a 30-minute time frame, not including if we stop the horse, it changes. But that's 3,000 opportunities to work on balance and writing responses and the whole sense, neurosensory, all the integration piece that it's really hard to get if you're using like a swing or all these pieces, I mean, there's all this research that like with vestibular system, I don't know if there's a study to back it, but like using a swing and vestibular system, you can get like 8 hours of benefits afterwards. So, I mean, just with the horse, I mean, I wish we had something to show for it, but you're definitely seeing that. I have kids that the biggest thing is that they're noting improvements in sleep for 2 or 3 days after using the horse. We're also noticing, funny enough, I've had kids, their pelvic floor with me not even addressing it has been, their improvements we've seen. A lot of my kids that have like even subtle like motor differences. Like I have one girl that was, there is a whole history of prematurity, possible she might have, CP left side weakness, but you can't even tell. But like she couldn't climb on the, access the playground, do gymnastic things, play soccer, all these things she struggled for years, and it wasn't working in an outpatient setting. And then she comes to me, and within just weeks, she's, doing those activities. I had a kid that is, she wasn't walking at 2.5, and we only did 3 sessions, and COVID hit. And then over that break, she started to walk. A lot of my kids with, social emotional differences, their body's getting regulated, and when they do have a hard time, we could relate to the horse. So like, if a kid is feeling really upset about something, we can use it as an opportunity to use the horse as a reflection and see, a similar situation, or just engaging with the horse kind of helps address those pieces as well. So, and I think just being outside, like I have some kids that would never do anything for me inside. I've seen them in other settings and they would just, it was too overstimulating. They were dysregulated, but we can go outside. And I mean, I would say the theme, and my student Emily would agree, the theme is bear hunt. It's been a big theme in general. So we can, I say half my clients who just do bear hunt. And so we just take that idea and we build on it and we're out in the woods. And I have kids that, I mean, because of their genetic disorders, like have a really hard time even navigating like uneven surfaces. Yet if we're out in the woods with support, they're trying to climb across fallen logs and jump over rocks and, you know, and then they're engaging in this pretend play aspects because they're outside and they're not realizing that it's a therapy environment. So
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. I've seen it too. It's amazing. Amazing. Truly. Okay. And then just some business tips that you could offer people that are listening here. I'm going to check this Facebook Live. Thanks, who's ever listening out there in Facebook Live land. If you have questions, please put them in the comments. But just some business tips, or if you have somebody who might be interested in hippotherapy, like where would they go to get training?
Absolutely.
Is there training happening right now?
Yes.
I don't even.
So there
Yeah.
is. So the American Hippotherapy Association, even if you're outside the US, is your go-to organization. They support international therapists as well. They are doing everything online at this point. They've transitioned to that, which is great. I know it's hard not to be hands-on, but they're trying to get a few hands-on with very COVID-based policies going on right now. But the American Hippotherapy Association has what they call is a level 1 and a level 2 course, which is the level 1 like introduces you to hippotherapy, and level 2 is working on some treatment principles related to integrating hippotherapy for OT, PT, and speech. So those are really great courses. They also have what they call connection courses on like sensory and the neuromuscular system. And those are definitely what, if you want to use the horse, those are definitely what I would suggest. It definitely helps coming from a horse background too. So if you are interested in using the horses but don't have a horse background, definitely my suggestion is go learn to do some riding yourself as well so you can get a better understanding. So those are just kind of the, you know, those big courses out there. And then, you know, for people that are kind of using nature or so forth, and anyone in general is kind of looking to a lot of those neurodiversity based groups that are out there. There's the SLP Neurodiversity Collective, I believe, on Facebook. But they're open to all therapists right now, I think even mental health providers. And it's really about, you know, listening to people that are neurodiverse and follow, you know, thinking about changing our perspective as therapists on this more strengths-based model and, you know, kind of working on those type of things. And there's a lot of really good resources out there for that.
And so, and that's, you're talking about the floor time approach as your relational kind of approach.
Yes.
Is there any other approach that you brought into that? Because I know there's some trauma relational approaches too.
Yes. Yeah. So my trauma stuff that I use is kind of a lot of, I mean, floor time has a lot of great things with it. There are some things that do need to get changed language wise, with the Neurodiversity Collective is kind of trying to work with them on. But there's just, I mean, I've just done a lot of just having, you know, experience with, you know, other people I know that have experienced trauma. So I've kind of learned that the relationship based approach works, and kind of transitioned the floor time type of ideas to kind of just work on emotional regulation and talking about emotions and co-regulation and narration. And those are kind of where I've gone with that. And then the other thing I do, which is kind of a little bit different too, is that I do a little feeding. I don't do it a lot, but I do it a lot with more of my kids that are, I have a few kids that have a lot of just like significant autoimmune disorders. And so very different from your typical kids that have, you know, that you might see for more sensory based. And I've kind of followed a lot of the work. It's called responsive feeding. Dr. Kaja Rowell does a lot of that work too. She's like the feeding doctor on Facebook.
Cool.
And she has a lot of really good, it's very relationship based approach type of feeding. And I kind of use that a bit too.
Awesome. I haven't heard of that. We'll have to put that in the comments.
I think I totally just said her first name wrong. I'm sorry. She would.
Oh, but it's called responsive feeding. Is that what you?
Responsive feeding, and she's called the feeding doctor She has her own, or extremely picky eaters, or there's a bunch of things associated with her. So
Cool. That's another good resource. Any other tips that you would give people who are wanting to maybe kind of do the model you're doing, or
yeah, I think
anything?
the biggest thing is just, making sure that you set up the whole, if you're, especially going to be billing insurance, just making sure that, you are setting up your practice correctly. So making sure like you get all your NPI numbers and all those pieces, and then, just all those pieces that I totally did not do correctly when I started off. So it bit me in the butt in terms of I had to read credential and do all these other things, and making sure you have your PLLC. Well, my state is required to be PLLC or your LLC or whatever you kind of do. And something if people are looking for help with that, there's another great Facebook group. She's another therapist in my state. They are clinic based and mostly telehealth right now, but they're called Ready, Set, Treat. And they are amazing. They have a great book on like how to set up a practice literally from A to Z, and like how to go through all the steps. And they have a Facebook group where people ask questions, and her name is Kristen Goodrich, and gosh, what's Susie? I don't forget what Susie's last name is. But they have a great Facebook group for that too. And it was kind of a nice reference for when I was resetting things up.
Yeah. I mean, I think because we're therapists, right? We just want to do the work, and the business part is kind of second. But I have learned too that it's great to have those systems in place.
Yes.
Before you go full in, especially insurance, because that can be a process for sure.
But yeah, now I think I've got insurance. I mean, I've got it down to flow pretty well.
Yeah.
So it's not bad. I mean, therapists get really scared, but if you research what insurances you want to be network on, and that's kind of where it's nice to know other therapists in your area and be like, hey, yes, you can't tell me how much they pay you, but are they good to deal with? Is it worth it? So forth. Was really helpful. So then I was able to pick the ones that would fit my practice best, which was basically what everyone in my state has anyway. So it's not like many people don't have a different insurance. So it worked out well.
So are you using a certain like billing software, or how are you billing insurance?
So before I went to have all these kids. When I was about like 15 to 20 kids, I did everything manually in terms of I used Word docs to do all my documentation. I used Office Ally and my Medicaid's portal to just bill directly through which Office Ally is great to use if you're just starting up. Now I just transitioned to Fusion like 2 weeks ago. So I am learning that whole process of, that, but the billing is not bad through them. It's just actually trying to figure out how to do all the templates and all that is a little bit harder. So
are you doing all of that yourself too right now?
So I'm doing that right now, but Fusion is great because they have a live person, like a live person. They have a person that you're given that's assigned to you that you could ask all your questions to. So
Got it. Okay, good to know that too. Awesome. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? Maybe a favorite quote or something that inspires you to keep moving forward, or anything else?
I don't know.
Questions out there, everybody. Please feel free to ask away.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, what is that one I was thinking about? Let me think. I got to organize those words in my head. I'm really bad with that sometimes. I was going to say a quote about patience, but I can't remember all the words that I have.
While you're thinking, I'll bring Emily in. So Emily is your student.
Yes.
And I love having students as well. But Emily, maybe you could share. And so are you an OT or OTA student? Maybe you could just share your experience thus far with more of this kind of non-traditional model and placement. What are your thoughts on that?
Certainly. So I am an OT student. I kind of searched out Heather because I have a previous background as a therapeutic riding instructor as well. So I already kind of knew that I wanted to do something incorporating hippotherapy with OT. And I'm also a very nature-based person in general too. So that's always been kind of a draw of mine as well. I actually started looking at New Hampshire for timber duck. So I kind of searched out Heather for that. So although it is a non-traditional, it's exactly what I want to do. And I think one of the best quotes that I have heard from parents after one of Heather's sessions is that it doesn't smell like therapy. And I liked that a lot for sure. So the kids, they just think that they're playing. They think that they're out having a good time. Heather's one of their best friends. Instead of using the word clients or kiddos like some people use, Heather just calls them friends. And I feel like it just creates a really positive environment for them to feel accepted, that they can build positive self-perceptions, and that they can just become stronger human beings in general, which I think is great.
I'm sure that speaks to her really drive to bring in that relationship piece.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. Anything else you'd like to say, Emily, about your experience? Is this your first or second level too?
This is my second one.
Okay.
So this is my last one before I go ahead and take those boards exams. And my first one was in an inpatient rehab. So it's definitely a big jump from that for sure. But I truly enjoy it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, congratulations and all the best.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
Yeah. All right. Did you think of your quote?
Yes, let's see if I said it right. This is actually a quote that my husband has actually come up with, but it's definitely something I use with the kids when we work on a lot of pieces related to, harder transitions or waiting, or so something I've used before is, so see if I say this right. So patience is the art of finding happiness while waiting.
Oh, patience is the art of finding happiness
It's
while
waiting. Yes.
Love it.
So
That's awesome.
that's a quote my husband uses with my daughter all the time. So I said to make sure I had it correctly. So
you balance family life and work.
yeah, and almost 18-month-old. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So it can be done, people. Look at her.
And while we have barely any babysitting because of COVID. So
you're making that all work too.
oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's crazy times, I tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so very much, Heather. I just appreciate your time and coming on here today. I know you're super busy and you probably have clients today. But I just wanted to share what you're doing because I think what you're doing is super amazing, very inspiring. And of course, my mission is to show the possibilities, inspire people to take that leap if they're considering it, and just to keep people moving forward in this nature-based movement. And really that to know that you can be flexible and it doesn't all have to look one way. You can bring in your own spin on it, your own passion about it. And I love the model of just using people's spaces. That seems to be kind of a win-win, like you said. And so I hope people can hear this and take those steps to do what they want to do as well. So thank you both for being here today. And I know somebody that was on had to leave earlier. So thanks, Robin, for being here as well. Any questions from Facebook land, or we are going to conclude this interview and just say thank you again. So, and hopefully we'll connect again sometime. I'd like to keep in touch with you, Heather.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm going to close this off. You guys have a great day, a wonderful weekend, hopefully in nature and probably with horses.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.